Have you ever noticed how the longest relationships aren't always the happiest ones? How some people spend 5, 10, even 15 years with someone, only to look back and realize they ignored red flags in the first 3 months that told them everything they needed to know. There's something strange about how we approach romantic relationships. We screen job candidates more carefully than life partners. We research purchases more thoroughly than the person we're planning to build a future with. We'll spend hours deciding on a laptop, but we'll commit to someone after a few months of best behavior and hope. And then we wonder why, years later, we're shocked by who they really are. Here's the truth. The person someone is at their core doesn't reveal itself in champagne moments and candlelit dinners. It reveals itself in stress, in conflict, in how they treat waiters and strangers, in what they do when they think no one important is watching. But here's the question that haunts so many men looking back on failed relationships. Why didn't I test for this earlier? Why did I wait until I was emotionally invested, financially entangled, maybe with children, to discover who she really was? You meet someone, there's chemistry, there's attraction, there's potential. And in that early intoxication, when everything is new and exciting, you make a choice. Often without realizing you're making it, you choose to believe, to hope, to give the benefit of the doubt. You see a small flash of something concerning, maybe how she speaks about her ex, maybe how she reacts when things don't go her way, maybe how she treats someone she considers beneath her, and you file it away, you rationalize it, you explain it away. She was just having a bad day. That's not really who she is. She's different with me. And maybe she is having a bad day. Maybe it was an anomaly. But here's what's fascinating. In most cases, those early flashes aren't anomalies. They're previews. The psychology behind this runs deeper than simple wishful thinking. When we're attracted to someone, when we want something to work, our brains engage in what psychologists call motivated reasoning. We don't evaluate evidence objectively. We evaluate it in service of the conclusion we want to reach. You want to believe she's kind, so you interpret ambiguous behavior as kindness. You want to believe she's honest, so you accept explanations that don't quite add up. You want to believe she's the one, so you ignore data that suggests otherwise. And in that space between hope and reality, years of your life can disappear. Let's be clear about what we're talking about when we talk about character. Character isn't about perfection. It's not about finding someone without flaws, without a past, without struggles. Character is about core values, about integrity when it costs something, about how someone treats others when there's nothing to gain, about patterns of behavior that reveal who someone is when the mask comes off. It's about kindness to people who can't do anything for them. Honesty when lying would be easier, accountability when deflection is available, emotional regulation when things get difficult, respect for boundaries even when they're inconvenient. These aren't superficial traits, these are the foundations that determine whether a relationship will survive real life, the stress, the conflict, the disappointments, the mundane reality of building something together. And here's the thing about character, it's remarkably stable. Research in personality psychology tells us that core personality traits are largely set by your mid-20s. People can grow, can mature, can develop better coping strategies. But fundamental character, the deep patterns of how someone moves through the world, those don't change easily, and they certainly don't change just because you love them. The person who lies to others will eventually lie to you. The person who speaks cruelly about people behind their backs will eventually speak that way about you. The person who can't take accountability in their other relationships won't suddenly become accountable in yours. This isn't cynicism, this is pattern recognition. But if character is so important, if it's so stable, if those early signs are so predictive, why do so many men avoid testing for it early? Here's what's really happening. Testing feels unromantic. It feels calculated. It feels like you're not trusting, not believing in love, not giving them a chance. We've been sold a story about love that says, when you meet the right person, you just know. You don't need to test, you don't need to screen, you just feel it. And there's truth in that initial feeling. Chemistry is real, connection is real, but chemistry and character are not the same thing. There's also fear. Fear that if you test, if you create situations that reveal character, you'll discover something you don't want to know. And as long as you don't know for sure, you can keep hoping. You can keep believing in the potential of who she might be rather than facing the reality of who she is. This is what psychologists call willful blindness. The choice not to know something because knowing it would require action you're not ready to take. But here's the truth. Delaying the test doesn't change the reality. It just means you'll discover it later when you have more to lose, when you're more invested, when leaving is harder. There's a window of time in every relationship, roughly the first 3 to 6 months, when testing is not just acceptable, it's essential. This is before you're deeply emotionally bonded, before you've made major commitments, before you've built a life together that's painful to unravel. During this window, her best behavior is on display, yes, but stress cracks still appear. Real personality leaks through. Character reveals itself if you're paying attention. And this is where it gets complex, because testing doesn't mean creating artificial drama. It doesn't mean playing games or setting traps. It means paying attention. It means creating natural situations that reveal how someone handles difficulty. What happens when plans change unexpectedly? When she doesn't get her way? When you set a boundary? When she's tired or stressed? When she interacts with people she doesn't need to impress? These moments are windows into character. And in the early stages, when you're still deciding whether to fully invest, these windows are gifts. They're giving you information. The question is, are you receiving it? Let me be specific about what to look for, what to test for, what reveals the character that will either build or destroy your future. Test 1. How does she handle disappointment? You can't make it to something she wanted to attend. You need to reschedule. Something doesn't go as planned. Does she respond with understanding and flexibility, or with guilt-tripping, silent treatment, disproportionate anger? This tells you how she'll handle the inevitable disappointments of a long-term relationship, and there will be thousands of them. Test 2. How does she speak about others? Listen to how she talks about her exes, about her friends when they're not around, about strangers, about people who've wronged her. Is there any grace, any acknowledgement of complexity, any accountability for her own role in conflicts? Or is everyone else always the villain in her story? Because here's what's fascinating. The narrative framework she uses for others is the same one she'll eventually use for you. Test 3. How does she respond to boundaries? Set a small boundary. Nothing major. Maybe you need alone time, or you're not ready to share something, or you don't want to do something she's suggesting. Does she respect it? Does she ask about it with genuine curiosity? Or does she push, manipulate, guilt, or punish? But here's what's really important. You're not looking for isolated incidents. You're looking for patterns. Everyone has bad days. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has moments where they're not their best self. What matters is the pattern, the consistent way she responds across situations, the predictable manner in which she handles difficulty. One instance of being short with a waiter might be a bad day. A pattern of treating service workers poorly is character. One time deflecting responsibility might be defensiveness. A pattern of never taking accountability is character. The psychology behind this is what researchers call behavioral consistency. People are remarkably consistent in how they handle similar situations across contexts. If you see a pattern in one area, you'll see it in others. And this is where it gets interesting, because early in a relationship, she's motivated to hide her worst traits. She's on her best behavior. She's managing impressions. But stress breaks through impression management. Inconvenience cracks the facade. Boundaries reveal real character. You're not looking for perfection. You're looking for patterns that you can live with, patterns that align with your values, patterns that suggest she can handle the reality of long-term partnership. Let me be direct with you about the red flags that, if you see them early, should make you seriously reconsider moving forward. Chronic victim mentality. If everyone in her past has wronged her, if she takes no responsibility for any failed relationship, if she's always the victim in every story, she's showing you that she cannot self-reflect. And without self-reflection, there's no growth, no accountability, no partnership, emotional volatility. If her mood swings are dramatic and unpredictable, if minor frustrations trigger major reactions, if you're already walking on eggshells 3 months in, it will only get worse. Early stage behavior is the best it will ever be. Disrespect for your boundaries. If she pushes when you say no, if she guilts you for having needs, if she makes you feel bad for having any life outside of her, this is controlling behavior, and it escalates. Cruelty to others. If she's casually cruel, mocking, contemptuous, enjoying others' suffering, she's showing you who she is. Right now it's directed at others. Eventually, it will be directed at you. Financial irresponsibility or entitlement. If she expects you to pay for everything, if she has no financial boundaries, if she's constantly in crisis despite having resources, you're seeing either manipulation or dysfunction. Either way, it's a preview of your financial future together. Inability to handle any criticism. If you can't bring up even small concerns without her melting down, becoming defensive, or turning it back on you, you're looking at someone who cannot engage in the ongoing negotiation that is a healthy relationship. These aren't small things. These aren't personality quirks you can love away. These are fundamental character issues that will define every day of your life together. Let me paint you a picture of what happens when you don't test early. You're 3 years in, maybe you're living together, maybe you're engaged, maybe you have a child on the way, and you start to see things you didn't see before, or maybe you saw them, but you didn't take them seriously. She's cruel when she's angry, she never takes responsibility, she treats you with contempt when you disappoint her, she's financially reckless, she can't handle the stress of real life without falling apart or lashing out. And you think, how did I not see this? But the truth is, you did see it. In month 2, in month 4, in those early moments when she snapped at a waiter, or couldn't apologize for being wrong, or made you feel guilty for having boundaries. You saw it. You just didn't want to believe it was a pattern. You wanted to believe it was an anomaly. You wanted to believe love would be enough. But here's what's really happening now. You're trapped. Not legally, not even practically necessarily, but emotionally, psychologically. You've invested years, you've built a life, you've made commitments. The sunk cost fallacy has you. The thought of starting over is overwhelming, so you stay. And you tell yourself it will get better, that she'll change, that things will improve, but character doesn't change, patterns don't reverse, you just get more used to them, more numb to them, more resigned to them. This is how men lose decades of their lives to relationships they knew in their gut weren't right, not because they were foolish, but because they didn't test early, they didn't screen, they didn't trust the data. So what does healthy, respectful screening actually look like? It's not about being cold or distant. It's not about constant suspicion. It's not about setting up elaborate traps or tests. It's about paying attention. It's about staying curious rather than assuming. It's about noticing patterns rather than isolated incidents. It's about creating normal life situations that reveal character, going somewhere that requires patience, having a disagreement, setting a small boundary, introducing her to different social contexts. Watching how she handles disappointment. It's about asking questions and listening to the answers without filtering them through your hopes. Tell me about your longest relationship. What went wrong? How do you handle conflict? What makes you angry? The answers matter, but what matters more is whether the answers match the behavior. It's about trusting your gut. If something feels off, if you're making excuses for behavior, if you're explaining away concerns, pause. Don't rationalize, investigate, and most importantly, it's about being willing to walk away based on what you discover. Because here's the truth, testing is meaningless if you're not willing to act on the results, but here's where it gets psychologically complex. The longer you wait to test, the harder it is to act on what you discover. There's a concept in attachment theory called traumatic bonding. You bond to someone through shared experiences, through vulnerability, through time, and once you're bonded, your brain treats leaving them as a threat. Even if rationally you know the relationship is wrong, your attachment system is screaming at you to stay, because to your nervous system, alone feels more dangerous than badly partnered. This is why testing early matters so much. Before deep attachment forms, you can evaluate more objectively. You can make decisions based on compatibility and character rather than on fear of being alone. The first 6 months are a gift. Your attachment is forming, yes, but it's not yet so deep that it overrides your judgment. You can still see clearly. You can still choose based on reality rather than based on the terror of starting over. They're telling you they expected easy access, and people who expect easy access rarely value what they receive. So how do you actually implement this? How do you screen without becoming cynical or closed off? First, get clear on your non-negotiables. What character traits are absolutely essential? What behaviors are deal breakers? Write them down. Be specific. Not she should be nice, but she treats service workers with respect. Not she should be honest, but she takes accountability when she's wrong. Second, create situations that reveal these traits. You're not manipulating. You're observing how she handles normal life. Need to see how she handles disappointment. Have something come up that requires changing plans. Need to see how she treats strangers, go somewhere service-oriented. Need to see how she handles boundaries, set one. Third, trust patterns over explanations. She can explain away anything once. She can have a reason for any single incident. But patterns? Patterns don't lie. Fourth, and this is crucial, be willing to walk away. If you're not willing to leave based on what you discover, you're not screening. You're just prolonging the inevitable. The point of testing isn't to find reasons to stay. It's to find out if you should. And sometimes the answer is no. And that's okay. That's the screening working. Here's a rough timeline that can protect you from years of regret. Months 1 to 3, light screening. You're paying attention, you're noticing patterns, but you're not deeply attached yet. This is observation mode. How does she handle small frustrations? How does she speak about others? What's her baseline temperament? Months 3 to 6, Deeper testing. You're creating situations that reveal character under mild stress. You're setting boundaries. You're introducing her to different contexts. You're asking deeper questions about values, past relationships, life philosophy. Month 6 to 12, pattern confirmation. By now, you've seen enough data. You know whether the patterns you're seeing are compatible with long-term partnership. This is decision time. Do the patterns you've observed suggest this person has the character for a life together? If you get to month 12 and you're still seeing major character issues, still making excuses, still hoping it will change, you already have your answer. Hope is not a strategy, and patterns this deep don't reverse. I know what some of you are thinking. But I love her. The good times are so good. Maybe I'm being too critical. Maybe I should just accept her as she is. Let me be clear. Accepting someone as they are is beautiful when you're accepting human imperfection, quirks, differences in preference. But accepting someone as they are when as they are includes poor character, consistent disrespect, emotional volatility, or cruelty. That's not acceptance. That's resignation. And resignation masquerading as love will cost you your peace, your self-respect, and ultimately, years of your life. The good times being good doesn't mean the relationship is good. Intermittent reinforcement, where sometimes things are wonderful and sometimes they're terrible, is actually what creates the strongest, most addictive bonds. It's the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. You're not staying because the relationship is good. You're staying because the unpredictable highs are so rewarding that you endure the lows in hopes of getting back to them. That's not love, that's addiction. If you're watching this and realizing you didn't screen early, that you're already years into a relationship with someone whose character you now question, I want you to hear this. You're not stupid, you're not weak, you're not alone. We live in a culture that tells us love conquers all, that if it's meant to be, it will work out, that questioning someone's character means you don't really love them. These are beautiful lies that keep people trapped in destructive relationships. You did the best you could with the information you had and the emotional tools you possessed at the time. Maybe you didn't know to screen. Maybe you saw red flags but didn't know they were red flags. Maybe you were lonely or hopeful or believed you could love someone into becoming who you needed them to be. That's human. That's understandable. And it's not too late to act on what you know now. You can't change the past, but you can change the trajectory. You can start paying attention now. You can start honoring what you observe. You can start making decisions based on reality rather than hope. It will be harder now than it would have been in month 3, but it's easier now than it will be in year 5 or year 10 or year 20. Here's what you need to understand. A partner of genuine character is one of the greatest gifts in life. Someone who is kind when it costs them, who is honest when lying would be easier, who takes accountability, who respects your boundaries, who treats everyone with basic dignity, who can regulate their emotions, who sees you as a whole person rather than a supporting character. That person exists. But you won't find them if you're not willing to screen out everyone who isn't them. Every moment you spend with someone of poor character is a moment you're not available for someone of good character. Every year you lose to hope and rationalization is a year you could have spent building something beautiful with someone worthy. Screening isn't cynical. It's self-respecting. It's not about perfect people. It's about compatible patterns. It's not about finding someone without flaws. It's about finding someone whose flaws you can live with and whose character you can trust. So here's where we are. You understand why screening matters. You understand what to look for. You understand the cost of not testing early. The question is, what will you do with this information? If you're single, will you take the time to screen the next person you date? Will you stay present and observant during those crucial early months? Will you trust patterns over explanations? If you're early in a relationship, will you start paying attention now? Will you create situations that reveal character? Will you be willing to act on what you discover? If you're years into a relationship, will you honestly assess what you've learned about this person's character? Will you stop hoping it will change and start deciding if you can live with what is? These aren't easy questions, but they're the questions that determine the quality of your life. Because here's the final truth. You can't build lasting happiness with someone of poor character. You can have moments of happiness. You can have chemistry, you can have hope, but lasting peace, deep trust, genuine partnership, those require character on both sides. Test women's character early, not because you're suspicious, but because you're serious. Not because you don't trust women, but because you trust yourself enough to require compatibility. Pay attention in those first 6 months. Watch how she handles frustration. Notice how she speaks about others. Observe how she responds to boundaries. Track patterns, not explanations. And be willing to walk away. Be willing to say, you're not a bad person, but your character isn't compatible with the life I'm trying to build. That's not cruelty, that's clarity. The right person won't be threatened by your standards. They'll respect them. They'll demonstrate their character naturally because it's who they are, not because they're performing. And when you find someone whose character genuinely aligns with yours, whose patterns suggest they can handle partnership, whose values match what you're looking for, you'll understand why all that screening mattered. Because you won't spend your days walking on eggshells, managing emotions, making excuses for behavior, or wondering who they really are. You'll know, because you took the time to find out before it cost you years. That's not cynicism, that's wisdom. And wisdom, in matters of the heart, is the kindest thing you can offer yourself.